Just having his class.
Mute you all. Okay, that's better. Yet, yato, yamita to sing. Single, retire, string, string, mama, dim, shattered, rubber joy. Tapakara come a lap of brain, I come with the swinger. Oh, Yalita, Iranya Kasipu, Tana Brenga. Oh, Pesova Dreta, Nadari Ruba, Rada Goody Sade, Rada Goody Sade. Kavakara come a love of brain a come with the swing Dali da Iranya Kasipu Dano Bringa Isavadreta Narani Rupa Raida Gade Sade Raida Gade Sade Sing the day, the swing 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 the day. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, Haribo, Haribo, Nijago, Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parabhakacharya also Teta Satashi Shima His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanara Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai, Param Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Kund Radhakunda Giri Govardhan ki jai, Vrindavanam ki jai, Mathuram ki jai, Navadiptam ki jai, Jagadasami ki jai, Yamunamai ki jai, Shivani Lasi Devi ki jai, Sumaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premananda Hari 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 Bol. So Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschachate Shatarni Somagana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tosmai Shigurabena Maha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master's divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torch light of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, we're going to continue with our reading of the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. Only thing is, today we're going to end the class about 15 minutes earlier because I have a program at the temple that I have to get to. So at 1:45, more or less, we're going to end the class. So let's continue without further ado. So Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hold on a second, let me just adjust this because I'm on a little bit different computer this time. Alright, and make it bigger for all of you. Alright, hold on a second. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya. There we go. Okay, so yesterday we actually read the chapter summary. So today we're going to start with chapter 13 in the Madhya Lila of the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta, and we're going to start normally, as we normally do, with text number 1. So, Sajyat Krishna Chaitanya Shri Ratagre Nanartayaha Yena, put my glasses on, Yenasis Jagatam Chitram Jagannathopi Vismitaha. Okay. May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who danced in front of the car of Sri Jagannath, be all glorified. By seeing his dancing, not only was the whole universe held in wonder, but Lord Jagannath himself became very much astonished. So, of course, this chapter is about the dancing of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during the Rath Yatra ceremony. Jaya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. All glories to Shri Krishna Chaitanya and Prabhu Nityananda. All glories to Dvaita Chandra, and all glories to the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jaya Shrutagana Shuna Karyeka Manha Rathayatraya Nritya Prabhura Parama Mohana. All glories to the listeners of Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. Please hear the description of the dancing of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the Rath Yatra festival. His dancing is very enchanting. Please hear of it with great attention. Aradina Mahaprabhu Hana Savadana Ratre Utigana Sange Kaila Pratasnana. The next day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his personal associates got up in the dark and attentively took their early morning baths. Pandu Vijaya Dekibare Karila Gamana Jagannatha Yatra Kaila Chari Singhasana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his personal associates then went to see the ceremony of Pandu Vijaya. During the ceremony, Lord Jagannath leaves his throne and gets up onto the car. And you can hear about this ceremony, which is an ecstatic ceremony. I've seen it, not in person, but I've seen it in videos. And during this ceremony, actually we'll hear about it, but basically Lord Jagannath is bouncing. He's so big they can't carry him, so he's bouncing from one cotton pad to the other. And right before he comes out, there's all sorts of musicians and jugglers and even fire eaters, just to make it a very festive occasion when he comes out to mount his throne or mount the cart. And actually, on this day, everyone is allowed to see Lord Jagannath. Normally, only those who are bona fide Hindus are allowed to see Lord Jagannath. Of course, that's not what Srila Prabhupada wanted. That's not what Lord Jagannath wants. Lord Jagannath is Jagannath. He's the Lord of the universe, not the Lord of Puri or the Lord of a particular ethnic group of people. But anyway, Prabhupada said, unless they recognize that at the temple in Jagannath Puri, Lord Jagannath will come out of the temple and join the Hare Krishna movement. Of course, he's already joined the Hare Krishna movement. We have so many Jagannath deities all over the world, and the deities of Lord Jagannath that we have in our temples are non-different than the deities in Jagannath Puri. There's no difference. No difference. Just like some of you think, oh, the deities of Radhasham Sundar and Vrindavan are different from the deities of Radha Golokananda, the deities of Rukmini Dwarkadish in Los Angeles, or the deities in any other temple of the world. But Radha and Krishna, not a different Radha and Krishna. So you really don't have to travel halfway around the world to see Radha and Krishna, even the deities of Radha and Krishna. You can simply go to your nearest Hare Krishna temple, and you can see Radha and Krishna in the words of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. If one is actually attentive to the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, what is the Hare Krishna Mahamantra? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. You'll understand that there's Radha and Krishna there. And when you understand that Radha and Krishna are there and you're absorbed in the mantra, you don't need to go anywhere to see Radha and Krishna. You can see Radha and Krishna through your ears. Anyway, but people have these misconceptions. Sorry about that. So, Apani Prataparudra Lana Patra Ganha Mahaprabhura Gane Karaya Vijaya Darshana. King Prataparudra in person, as well as his entourage, allowed the Pandu Vijaya ceremony to be seen by all the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Advaita Nitayadi Sange Bhakta Ganha Sukhe Mahaprabhu Deke Ishwara Gamana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his prominent devotees, Advaita Acharya, Nityananda Prabhu, and others, were very happy to observe how Lord Jagannath began the Rath Yatra. Balishta Dayatagana Yena Matahati Jagannatha Vijaya Karaya Karihata Hati. The very strongly built Dayitas, carriers of the Jagannath deity, were as powerful, these are people, not elephants, were as powerful as drunken elephants. They manually carried Lord Jagannath from the throne to the car. And Prabhupada explains who's the Dayatas. Dayata means actually one who's received the mercy. Actually, Prabhupada explains that there. The word Dayata refers to one who has received the mercy of the Lord. So we are all Dayatas. Lord Jagannath has a number of stalwart servants known as Dayatas. These servants do not come from very high caste families, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, or Vaishyas, but because they are engaged in the service of the Lord, they have been elevated to a respected position. Thus they are known as Daitas. These servants of Lord Jagannath take care of the Lord from the day of the Snani Yatra up to the time the Lord is carried from the throne to the Rath Yatra car. Snani Yatra is the bathing ceremony of Lord Jagannath, which occurs about 14 days before the Rath Yatra, in which Lord Jagannath is bathed by all the devotees, and ostensibly he gets sick, but actually he's not sick. He wants to have time with the goddess of fortune, his wife, and then after 2 weeks of being with his wife, he gets tired of that because he wants to be with his girlfriends. So therefore he goes on his Rath Yatra. But he tells his wife he's just going for a walk. Such are the pastimes of the Lord. In the Kshetra Mahatmya, these Dayatas are said to come from the Shavaras. Ooh, a caste that keeps and sells pigs. They don't do that now, but they came from that caste originally. However, among the Dayatas, there are also many who come from the Brahmana caste. Those Dayatas coming from the Brahmana families are called Dayatapatis. That means the lords or the leaders of the Dayatas. The Dayatapatis offer such food as sweetmeats to Lord Jagannath during the Anavasara, the resting period after Snani Yatra. Of course, that word pati is also used sometimes by wives in relationship to their husbands. They call pati, pati, pati. Wherefore art thou pati? Anyway, but actually Krishna's the pati. Everybody else is not a pati, unless they're serving the pati. Anyway, whatever. We're all servants. We are not the supreme patis. But sometimes people in illusion think that someone is the supreme pati. They also make the early morning offering of sweetmeats daily. It is said that during the Anavasara, that means the time when Lord Jagannath is sick, or with the goddess of fortune, Jagannath suffers from fever, and then Dayatapatis offer him an infusion of drugs represented by fruit juice. It is said that in the beginning, Lord Jagannath was worshipped by the Shavaras and was known as the deity Lila Madhava. There's a whole beautiful story about that. Maybe I'll tell that story tomorrow. That would be interesting. Later, when the deity was established in the temple, the Lord became known as Jagannath. Because the deities were taken from the Shavaras, all the Shavara devotees were elevated to the position of Dayatas. And it's an amazing story. We'll have to tell it tomorrow. Not today, because it's not enough time. Kataka Dayatakare Skanda Alambana Kataka Dayatadare Sri Padma Charana. While carrying the deity of Lord Jagannath, some of the Dayatas took hold of his shoulders of the Lord, and some caught his lotus feet. Kati tate pata durda stula pata dori dvidike ditagana uthaya taha tari. The Lord Jagannath deity was bound at the waist by a strong, thick rope made of silk. From two sides, the Dayatas caught hold of this rope and raised the deity. Uchadura tuli saba patistane stane eka tuli haite twaraya ara tulite ane. Strong, puffed up cotton pads called tulis were spread out from the throne of the car, and the heavy deity of Lord Jagannath was carried from one pillow-like pad to the next by the Dayatas. Prabhupada gate tulihaya kanda kanda tula sabodihaya shabahaya prachanda. While the Dayatas carried the heavy Jagannath deity from one pad to the next, some of the pads broke, and the cotton contents floated into the air. When they broke, they made a heavy cracking sound. Wow. That's how heavy Lord Jagannath is. Vishwambara Jagannathe ke chalaite pare apana chayak chale karite vihare. Lord Jagannath is the maintainer of the whole universe. Who can carry him from one place to another? The Lord moves by his personal will just to perform his pastimes. Mahaprabhu Manima Kari Dwani Nanavadya Kolahale Kichwina Shuni. While the Lord was transported from the throne to the car, tumultuous sounds were made on various musical instruments. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was chanting, Manima, Manima, but he could not be heard. Prabhupada explains the word Manima is used to address a respectable person in Orissa. Lord Jagannath was being respectfully addressed by Sri Chaitanya in this way. Tabi prataparudrakare apane sevana suvarna marjani lana kare pata samarjana. While the Lord is being carried from the throne to the car, King Prataparudra personally engaged in the Lord's service by cleansing the road with a broom that had a golden handle. So this is something the devotees oftentimes, let us say, misrepresent. They usually have the Rath Yatra ceremony going on, and then King Prataparudra sweeping the road in front of the cart. Actually, what King Prataparudra did is that he actually cleansed the road in front of Lord Jagannath as he was being carried to the cart. So, sorry about that, Prabhus. Chandana jale te kare patani se chane, tucha seva karivasi rajasingasane. The king sprinkled the road with sandalwood-scented water. Although he was the owner of the royal throne, he engaged in menial service for the sake of Lord Jagannath. Uttamahana Raja Kare Utucha Sevana Otoiva Jagannathera Kripara Bhajana. Although the king was the most exalted, respectable person, still he accepted menial service for the Lord. He therefore became a suitable candidate for receiving the Lord's mercy. Now, that's actually a very important point, that many of us, we have this overinflated conception of ourselves, or we have a very high position. One of the two things is there. And then when we're asked to do something that is menial means like cleaning the road, cleaning the bathrooms, washing Krishna's pots, then we think, oh, what are they doing? I'm too good for that. I'm a sannyasi. I'm more advanced. I'm the guru. Gurus don't do things like that. But we heard previously how Caitanya Mahaprabhu, along with his associates, cleansed the Gundicha temple. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also cleansed the Gundicha temple using, or the throne of the Lord in the Gundicha temple, using his own cloth. And he was the one who did the most cleaning. So we should never think that we're too good for menial service for the Lord. Now, I remember many times I've had experience with devotees who came from, let's say, an aristocratic background. We had some devotees who came from such an aristocratic background that they never even tied their own shoes before. They'd always had a servant tie their shoes, a servant pick up after them, and everything like that. So when I would ask them, can you clean the floor of the kitchen or the pots? Oh, what do you think I am? Do you think I'm that type of person? Wow. And therefore, sometimes we had to teach them some very heavy lessons, which sometimes they learned and sometimes they didn't. I would usually say in Spanish that you have to be a para todos. That means ready to do whatever Krishna wants. If Krishna wants you to clean the toilet, you clean the toilets. If Krishna wants you to sit on the Vyasasan, you sit on the Vyasasan. Whatever, because we're servants. That's it. We're servants. It's like in a few days, we're going to be celebrating Srimati Radharani's appearance date. And everyone likes to talk about the intimate pastimes of Radharani and everything like that, but they really do not understand her mood. You know, they project their own concept of what romantic things are, or romantic things are constituted of, and they think that it's like that with Radha and Krishna. It ain't, Prabhus. It ain't. Or it isn't, proper English. So it ain't. What it is Radharani is just trying to please Krishna. And actually, I'm going to speak about that on Radharani's appearance day. Rather than tell so many stories about Radharani, I am going to emphasize the point, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does in the last chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrta, the point of Radharani's mood. What does it mean to serve Radharani, to follow in her footsteps? Okay. Sorry about that. Mahaprabhu Sukhapaila Se Seva Dekite, Mahaprabhu Kripa Haila Se Seva Ha Ite. Upon seeing the king engaged in such menial service, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very happy. Simply by rendering this service, the king received the mercy of the Lord. Now, doesn't that teach us something? Simply by rolling up your sleeves and doing some menial service for the Lord, rather than just sitting on some big seat and thinking yourself such a great devotee, then you receive the mercy of the Lord if you actually take this menial service. And you see, Prabhupada, when he came to the Western world, it's not that the devotees were ready to receive him as he walked off the boat and chanting Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, ready to serve him. But Prabhupada had to serve them, the first devotees, in menial ways. He had to clean up after them. Yep, he had to cook for them. He had to do, practically speaking, he had to almost change their diapers in the beginning days of the movement. And because Prabhupada did that, then these personalities were convinced to take up Krishna consciousness. Had Prabhupada not been humble, if Prabhupada was thinking, I am a pure devotee of Brajabasi coming from the spiritual world, Vrindavan, then none of us would be here today. Unless one receives the mercy of the Lord, he cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or engage in his devotional service. Atapite deva padambujadvaya prasada lishanu grihita hevahi janati tatvam bhagavan mahim no nachanyeko picharam vichinvan. That's from the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 14th chapter, text 29. A devotee who has received even a small fraction of the mercy of the Lord can understand him. Others may engage in theoretical speculation to understand the Lord, but they cannot know anything about him. Although Maharaj Prataparuja was very eager to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord refused to see him. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the king engage in menial service for Lord Jagannath, he became very happy. Thus the king became eligible to receive Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. If a devotee accepts Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the universal guru and Lord Jagannath as the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, he is benefited by the combined mercy of Krishna and Guru. That is stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his instructions to Rupa Goswami. This is from the Madhya Lila, 19th chapter, text 151. Very important verse which everyone should learn. Brahmanda Brahmate Kona Bhagyavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Vija. The seed of devotional service fructifies and becomes a transcendental creeper. Finally, it reaches the lotus feet of the Lord in the spiritual sky. This seed is obtained by the mercy of the Lord and the Guru. By the Lord's mercy, one gets the association of a bona fide Guru, and by the mercy of the Guru, one gets a chance to render devotional service. Devotional service, the science of Bhakti Yoga, carries one from this material world to the spiritual world. And just to reiterate what was just said there, famous verse, that we are wandering throughout all the different material universes, all the different types of bodies, male, female, in between. And finally we come to the point of what frustration and crying out to Krishna. And when we get frustrated and cry out to Krishna, Krishna sends Gurudev. And when Gurudev comes, then he gives us the Bhakti Lata Bij. And how do we get the Bhakti Lata Bij? Through our ear, from hearing, by hearing. So, and that hearing, Bhavanti Vrikarna Rasayana Gatata Jeshana Dashu Bhavarga Varmani Shraddha Ratira Bhakti Anukrameshati. That sound vibration goes from the ear to the heart. And then when we cultivate that seed of devotion, the Bhakti Lata Bij, it grows more and more and more and more, and finally enters or pierces through the coverings of the material universe and enters into the spiritual realm and offers flowers at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his consort. Ratera sajani deki loke chamatkara navahima mayarata sumera akara. Everyone was astonished to see the decorations on the Ratha car. The car appeared to be newly made of gold, and it was as high as Mount Sumeru. So, of course, that's hyperbole. Obviously, it wasn't as high as Mount Sumeru, but it was very high. In the year 1973, there was a gorgeous Rath Yatra festival in London, England, and the car was brought to Trafalgar Square. The London daily newspaper, The Guardian, published a front-page photo caption, ISKCON Rath Yatra is rival to the Nelson Column in Trafalgar Square. The Nelson Column is a very impressive statue of Lord Nelson and can be seen from a good distance. Just as the residents of Puri compared the Rath Yatra car to Mount Sumeru, the residents of London considered the car rival to the Nelson Monument. So it's like a metaphorical comparison. Obviously, it wasn't. The car was in London higher than the Nelson Monument, but the car in Jagannath Puri wasn't higher than Mount Sumeru. I mean, Mount Sumeru is probably hundreds of miles high. So, Shata Shata Su Chamara Darbane Utvala Upare Pataka Shobhe Chandoya Nirmala. The decorations included bright mirrors and hundreds of chamaras, white whisks made of yak tails. On top of the car were a neat and clean canopy and a very beautiful flag. Gara goro kinkini bhaje gantara duhokva neta nana chitrapata vastre rata vibhushita. The car was also decorated with silken cloth and various pictures. Many brass bells, gongs, and ankle bells rang. Lilaya chadila ishvara ratera hupara aradvi rate chade subhadra haladara. For the pastimes of the Rath Yatra ceremony, Lord Jagannath got aboard one car, and his sister Subhadra and elder brother Balarama got aboard two other cars. Panchadasha Dineshwara Mahalakshmi Lana Tanrasangi Krita Kaila Nivrete Vasya. For 15 days the Lord had remained in a secluded place with the Supreme Goddess of Fortune and had performed his pastimes with her. And Prabhupada explains here the 15-day period of Anavastra is also called Nibriti in honor of the solitary place where the Supreme Goddess of Fortune lives. After living there a fortnight, Lord Jagannath took permission from the Goddess of Fortune to leave. Tanhara samati lana bhokte sukatite rate chari bhagira haila vihara karite. Having taken permission from the Goddess of Fortune, the Lord came out to ride on the Rath Yatra car and perform his pastimes for the pleasure of the devotees. So in this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura comments that as an ideal husband, Lord Jagannath remained 15 days in a secluded place with his wife, the Supreme Goddess of Fortune. Nonetheless, the Lord wanted to come out of seclusion to give happiness to his devotees. The Lord enjoys himself in two ways known as Swakiya and Parakiya. The Lord's conjugal love in the Swakiya ras relates to the regulative principles observed in Dwaraka, where the Lord has many married queens. But in Vrindavan, the conjugal love of the Lord is not with his married wives, but with his girlfriends, the gopis. Conjugal love with the gopis is called Parakiya rasa. Lord Jagannath leaves the secluded place where he enjoys the company of the supreme goddess of fortune in Swakiya rasa. That means someone who belongs to you. In other words, married life. And he goes to Vrindavan, where he enjoys the Parakiya rasa. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura therefore reminds us that the Lord's pleasure in Parakiya rasa is superior to his pleasure in Swakiya rasa. In the material world, Parakiya rasa, or loving affairs with unmarried girlfriends, is the most degraded relationship. But in the spiritual world, this type of loving affair is considered the supreme enjoyment. In the material world, everything is but a reflection of the spiritual world, and that reflection is perverted. We cannot understand the affairs of the spiritual world on the basis of our experience in the material world. The Lord's pastimes with the gopis are therefore misunderstood by mundane scholars and word wranglers. That means people speculate. The Parakiya rasa of the spiritual world should not be discussed except by one who is very advanced in pure devotional service. The Parakiya rasa in the spiritual world and that in the material world are not comparable. The former is like gold and the latter is like iron, or like coal, basically. Because the difference between the two is so great they cannot be actually compared. However, just as a knowledgeable person can easily distinguish gold from iron, one who has proper realization can easily distinguish the transcendental activities of the spiritual world from the material activities. One thing is we should understand, according to the Bhagavad Gita in the 15th chapter, we find a description of the material world as compared to a reflection of a banyan tree that one is looking at, and that reflection is on a body of water, on a river or a lake. And that reflection of the banyan tree is upside down when you're standing on the bank of the river, because then the branches will be down and the roots will be up. However, the banyan tree is a very appropriate example because the banyan tree has roots and branches in both directions anyway, even in the real world, without even talking about a reflection. So in other words, it's very difficult to distinguish. So, in any case, this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world, and those things which are the highest in the spiritual world are the lowest here. For example, here we talk about the conjugal love or the Parakiya ras or someone with his girlfriends. So that's pretty low here. I know you may disagree, but that's what the Shastras say. So that's pretty low. And in the same way, intoxication is pretty low here, right? Someone's intoxicated is very low. How low can you go? But in the spiritual world, you also have intoxication as well as this sort of relationship, Krishna with his girlfriends. But it's not that anybody has girlfriends in the spiritual world. It's just Krishna. And you may say, this is illicit life. It's not illicit life because everyone is already married to Krishna. Everyone is Krishna's Prakriti. And Krishna is the Pati Dev of everybody. That's the real point. Krishna is everyone, in one sense, an ontological sense. Krishna is like everyone's husband. And when we understand that, we will be detached from the husbands of this world and from the girlfriends of this world, or whatever it is. Anyway, so everyone is Krishna's. It's not that everyone's a woman in the spiritual world, but everyone has the pleasure of Krishna as their primary focal point in their existence. This is a very important point to understand. So it's not like this material world. This material world is like the iron, as Prabhupada said, or I've even saying it's worse. It's like the stool. And the spiritual world is like better than gold. It's like diamond jewels in comparison. But one is the reflection of the other. It's like a mirror. It's like a virtual reality where people are thinking they're enjoying. Just like if you're going on your computer and you find an apple, on your computer, and you somehow or other manipulate the mouse, and you're able to, mouse means, or mouse pad or whatever, you're able to put a chew mark into the apple. You think, wow, I'm eating this apple. You're not. You're not eating the apple. You're just an illusion thinking you're enjoying the apple. It's something like vicarious enjoyment, where someone watches someone else do something and they're enjoying, thinking themselves in that particular situation. It's called vicarious enjoyment. Like, especially people who watch romantic films, it's like that. Vicarious enjoyment. It's just an illusion. So if you really want real enjoyment, that means just to serve Krishna with all your heart and all your might and all your soul. Okay, so maybe another verse or two, and then we will end. Sukshma Sreta Balu Pate Pulinera Sama Dvidake Tuta Saba Yena Vrindavana. The fine white sand spread all over the path resembled the bank of the Yamuna, and the small gardens on both sides looked just like those in Vrindavana. Rate Chadi Jagannatha Kadila Gamanha Dvi Parshvede Gichale Anandita Mana. As Lord Jagannath rode in his car and saw the beauty on both sides, his mind was filled with pleasure. Goda Sabha Ratatani Kariya Ananda Kshane Sigra Chale Rata Kshane Chale Manda. The pullers of the car were known as Godas, and they pulled with great pleasure. However, the car sometimes went very fast and sometimes very slow. Shane Stira Anarahe Tanileha Nachale Ishwara Ichaya Chale Nachale Karo Bale. Sometimes the car would stand still and not move, even though it was pulled very vigorously. The chariot therefore moved by the will of the Lord, not by the strength of any ordinary person. And of course, one story I'll tell right now. Let's write this down. We went up to text 28. Is that when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was living as a little baby with his parents, that is his father, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, right on the main path where the Rath Yatra cart was passing by. During the Rath Yatra, the cart stopped in front of his house and it would not move, no matter who tried to move it. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's mother took him out, put him at the feet of Lord Jagannath, and the garland of Lord Jagannath fell around him. What a sign. And not only that, he got his first grains during the Rath Yatra ceremony from Lord Jagannath. Okay, I think we just have time for one question because we have a program in a little while. I'm going to try to broadcast this next program too, but we will see if it's possible. Hold on a secondito. So one person gets an opportunity to ask a question tonight before we end. So who would like to ask a question? Madhya.
Dandavat Maharaj, Guru Maharaj. So my question, I have two, but since you don't have time, so I ask just one question relevant to today's reading is Daityas, they call not Daitya, Daitas. Daitas means those who are kind of servant of Lord Jagannath. They were able to very closely come and carry the Lord and do all this stuff. And they were, some of them, they were not from higher caste. But if I see Haridas Thakur, he was also of lower caste, but he kept himself away from Lord Chaitanya. How come these Daitas were so close touching, doing all these things, Lord Jagannath and the Haridas Thakur, why he was kept away?
That's actually a very good question because at least the Dayatas, they were part of Hindu culture according to the just according to the culture that they had there. I mean, I'm not saying it was right. I'm not saying it was wrong, but Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the devotees generally respected the culture. Also, the Dayatas, uh, they actually were part of the whole story about how Lord Jagannath was found, or the installation, not installation, but actually the story of Jagannath Puri, which I'm going to tell tomorrow, hopefully. So there's a whole history. They come from a family history uh, of those who worshiped Lord Jagannath from the very beginning. And they originally they were worshiping Nila Madhava. I don't have time to tell the whole story right now, but there is a historical basis for that too, for the Dayatas.
Thank you,
And
Maharaj.
hopefully that explains that. And Haridas Thakur was considered to be outside of Vedic culture. At least the Dayatas, they were considered a type of Hindus, hopefully, who ate pigs. But Haridas Thakur, because he was born in a Muslim family, that was considered even further away from Vedic culture or Varnashram culture. So we do have to end now because I have this program at the temple and I'm about 5 minutes away from the temple and I have to drive to the temple. So hopefully I'm going to broadcast. I will send a note out on the WhatsApp group if I'm going to broadcast this next class. It's a meeting with some students at the temple. It's done on Thursday evening. So thank you very much.
Thank
We'll
you.
see everybody tomorrow, same time, same station. All glories to His